Next, now we're going to focus on the opposite way, which is from scientific to standard. So you're going to be given scientific notation and convert it to standard. Now, if it's a positive number on a 10, so I'm just going to write 4.5 on the left side. So I'm going to move my decimal 7 times. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And then I'm going to fill in where all basically my curve with zeros. 1 here, 2 here, 3 here, 4 here, 5 here. So 6 zeros. So it's basically going to be 45 million. That's going to be my standard number. So again, if my exponent is positive, I'm going to put my 4.5 on the left hand side and move my decimal going to the right. Now, next example, 3.2, since it's times 10 to the negative 4, that means that I'm going to put my 3.2 on the right hand side. Since it's negative exponent, that means I'm going to move my decimal to the left. So 1, 2, 3, 4. Alright, so all my curves, I'm going to put zeros in them. Where my arrow is my decimal, and I'll put one more 0. So my standard number would be 0.00032. So here's my standard number for example 1. And then here's my standard number for example 2. So 45 million for example 1 and 0.00032 for my example 2. Now, the reason I like to put 0 in front of the decimal is to help emphasize that it's a decimal number with a 0 in front. Now, engineers and people working in the medical field, they tend to put 0 in front of the decimal to emphasize that there is a decimal. People who do not put a 0, sometimes your coworkers, people you work with, may not know the difference, may not know or notice the decimal. And so if they don't notice the decimal, then the numbers that they're going to be working with can affect their projects, their constructions, especially when it comes to budget. So when you have a decimal, just like example 2, it's always best practice to put a 0 in front of it to emphasize that you have a decimal. Now let's do 2 more examples going from scientific to standard. Alright, for example 3, since it's 9.1 times 10 to the positive 3, I'm going to put my 9.1 on the left hand side. Since it's times 10 to the third power positive 3, that means I'm going to move my decimal 3 times. So 1, 2, 3. So after my 1, I'm going to fill in my zeros where the curves that you see are right here. And I'm going to stop at my arrow. So that's why when I put my decimal here at the arrow. Now, if you have a number like that, you can just write the number that's in front of the decimal. So 9,100, that's my standard. I don't have to put the decimal at the end. Now, in our next example, 6.8 times 10 to the negative 5th power. So since it's to the negative exponent, I'm going to put 6.8 on the right hand side. And then I'm going to move my decimal 5 times. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So starting from my 6, going to the left, 0 on each curve. Put a decimal at my arrow, and then one more 0. So is going to be 0.0000068. That's my standard number. So 9,100 is my answer, my standard number for this example. And then on the last example, my standard would be 0.000068. So there's a pattern that you probably notice, is that if it's a positive exponent, going from scientific to standard, you move the decimal to the right. If it was negative, going from scientific to standard, you move the decimal to the left. So, if you were to say write a rule to memorize for scientific to standard, so if it's a positive exponent, if you start off with positive, so again, if you start off with positive, that means you're going to move your decimal to the right. If you start off with a negative exponent, that means you're going to move your decimal to the left. Now, again, this concept, the rules, these two right here, positive exponent, you move the decimal to the right. Negative exponent, you move the decimal to the left. Only for scientific to standard, meaning you go from scientific notation to standard notation. If you compare the two processes, the two rules, it's very different between standard to scientific versus scientific to standard. So, be very careful. Make sure you know the difference between these two. So, memorize the rules for standard to scientific and the rules for scientific to standard, but do not mix them up. If you do mix them up, you're going to mess up your work and get the wrong answer.